Hello and welcome to everyone. Here you are again at another Career Revolution series interview. And today, my guest is the revered Fortune Gamanya, who is an organizational development strategist and works with leaders and future thinkers to create and design and prepare their workforce for the future of work. She's a specialist in corporate learning and design. She does work within strategy facilitation and implementation. And what is so fascinating about Fortune is her story of weaving in and out of the corporate world and her entrepreneurial ventures. It's like a dance. It feels as if it's a dance. And without any further ado, I'm going to welcome Fortune from backstage. Hello, Fortune, and welcome.
Hi, Licia. Thank you so much for having me, and hello to all your viewers.
It's wonderful for you to be here as my guest and for us to be able to have this conversation to share some career revolution ideas and thinking and sparks that you've traveled along to really inspire those who are listening and tuning in. So, to everybody who's here, thank you for joining us and welcome. Do let us know what city you're watching from in the comments. You might be watching this on LinkedIn Live. You might be listening to it via YouTube. You could also be catching it on Facebook, or you might be catching it on podcast version, Anchor FM, which streams through to Spotify and iTunes. So there's a multiple of places, Fortune, that we're going to be heard
I've just realized.
Isn't it great? We're going to be in 7 different places all at once.
Yeah.
But let's tuck into some of the conversations that we're going to have, Fortune. Let's get close and start talking about, as I introduced you, the dance of your career trajectory. You and I met some years ago when you were doing your EMBA. We're going to talk in detail about what powered you to do that, what you chose to study. I want to understand some of that thinking and that the sort of decisions along the way. And then you're going to bring us up to where you are now and what happened post EMBA, because that kind of postgraduate study is always a revolution or an evolution of the mind. There's always some type of massive change that follows after that. But before we get into that, it's so interesting, this corporate design and organizational strategic work that you're doing, particularly now, here in 2022, and the teams and the leadership that you're working with to be able to mold and transition their people for the future of work. I mean, gosh, where do we begin in talking and unpacking that in itself? Just weigh in and tell us about Fortune in the present before I start taking you back into the past.
Yeah. So I think the time that we find ourselves in is very interesting because work as we've known it, assessment of performance as we've known it, has changed. I was speaking to a group of MBA students a week and a half ago, and I was saying, gone are the days when you measured people's output by the number of hours that they clock in and out from work, because for the past 2 years, people haven't been clocking in and out. So it actually, performance management has been output based rather than the time that you invest. So I think from a leadership perspective, the mindset has had to shift in terms of, how they assess the value that is generated by their people. And the things that we thought were the variables pre-COVID, which was, the workplace, because when we look at the future of work, we look at 3 components. We look at the work, which is the value that is generated. We look at the workplace, which is the place where the value is generated. And we look at the workforce, who is generating the value. So pre-COVID, what was constant was the workplace. If somebody said, I'm going to meet this particular organization, they went to the particular building. But post-COVID, you could meet anywhere, Zoom, Teams, anywhere, really. The organization is the person. So there's never been a time when this whole thing that says your people are the organization has stood true. So I think that is, just some of the few things that we've had to think differently about from a future of work perspective.
So interesting and so fascinating. And how, as you're talking, I just have a sense of the reverence that your experience, notwithstanding your EMBA and your acquired knowledge and your numerous qualifications that you have, but your experience and your journey that you bring with you into the spaces that you then further facilitate and shape. And I mean, that's really why we're here, is to unpack that and look at the dance, break it down and understand it and look at the dance. But I really say that, Fortune, with the deepest honor and respect for all of the notches along the way that you have traveled, all of the steps and the movement that you have moved through, that you bring such an incredible amount of wisdom and knowledge and intuition to the then thing of organizational design work. As you
so when you talk about education, Licia, one of the things that I learned earlier on is that education is not the number of degrees that you have, but the degree to which your worldview is expanded. But you have to be willing to get your worldview expanded. Peter Senge says, this concept of a shared mental model doesn't come easy. It comes with our bravery and courage to hold our own internal models of the world to the world for scrutiny and balance between advocacy and inquiry. So when you ask me about where, what you perceive as wisdom and intuition that I bring into the space, is I have learned over time, because I say a facilitator is a holder of space, a space that is cohabited by multiple perspectives. So for you to be able to hold a space where multiple perspectives can coexist harmoniously, you have to be willing to hold your perspective lightly without absolving it. And that's a fine balance. Roger Martin says the highest form of intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing views and still be able to operate and to function. And so I think one of the things that I bring to the work that I do is the ability to hold my perspective lightly without absolving it, hold it light enough that I'm still okay to advocate for it without creating any I would say violating dominance over the other. So I would say that for me, and I always see a challenge and an experience of the new culture as a gift to the expansion of my worldview.
Gosh, absolutely. Well, what a gift you bring to those organizations.
Thank
So
you.
tell us about the decision to move into your EMBA and to complete an EMBA. Tell us about that. What prompted that? 'Cause that in itself
You know,
is the, yeah,
yeah.
revolution.
So, I don't know if any of your viewers follow any of these personality assessments. I do think that one of the reasons why I pursued an MBA, look, I had also just applied for the mainstream MBA because I'm trying to think, I think I was 32 when I applied
Mm.
for my MBA, and I got in. Um, And when I got in, I sent the then director of executive education at the Graduate School of Business at UCT. It was actually in 2014. I sent her a message, so excited. And I said, listen, I made it onto the MBA. She sent me a message. And I think, I'm saying this with the utmost respect to the mainstream MBA because she
Yes.
said, oh my God, Fortune, I think you'll be bored. So I was expecting, congratulations, you made it in. And she said, I think that you're going to be bored. And I said, why? She said, did you tell them all the things that you've done? And I said, what do you mean? And in no time, she had sent this beautifully crafted email to the director of the executive MBA telling him about all the things that I had done. And she said, listen, she would be a great addition to your EMBA class. And I was going to the airport, um, and I think in less than an hour, I got an email from the director of the EMBA saying, every year we pull a wild card, and based on this recommendation,
You're
we would
it.
like to
You're the wild
invite
card.
you. We would like to invite you onto the executive MBA. I was like, okay.
Okay.
Just now, I was like, yay!
I'm celebrating the MBA and now
Yes.
I've been bumped
And
up.
so to go back to your question around what drove you to do that, I think one of the things is that I want to believe I'm an ambitious person. And so that ambition had always yearned for this thing called the MBA. And so, but I know that when I did it, I had reflected on my previous experience at the Graduate School of Business. And I remember in my motivation, I said, over and above the piece of paper, what I want to do is get my worldview challenged by people who are different from me, who have absolutely nothing to lose from challenging me. And so that is why. I went and I did my EMBA, which was going to be an MBA in the beginning, and then ended up being an EMBA, thanks to Linda Buckley.
That's a brilliant story. That is that is what Linda was saying, is how I was feeling in imagining you walking into organizations, and as you so rightly said, you withhold yourself for the needs of the facilitation, but who you are as you stand there with your wisdom and your experience and your guidance are so adeptly able to shift and transition what needs to happen there and then. So in a way, I feel that's incredible. That's amazing. So let's talk career revolution wise now, because I've said there's been this dance, between the corporate corridors, in a corporate corridor, out a corporate corridor, into your entrepreneurship. And you are a creator in the sense of not, you're incredibly creative, but you're a creator in the sense of how you see and design and want to do work. And I know that when we spoke, the work that you wanted to do wasn't sitting there in one of those corporate corridors. It wasn't available. You were too early for what the work was, in a sense. The need, you wanted to do it, and they didn't know that you were ready. But now, that shift in movement. So you have been a creator of the work that you wanted to do, and I think you've. I know so often our conversations often reflect on how much of that knowledge of the work that you want to do you've held true to, and you were brave enough to go out and create it and do it when it wasn't on offer. You started Luminary Consulting, and you put yourself into the space and the place to be able to do the work that you wanted to do. And then organizations came calling saying that you could come into us and you could do that within our group, within our calling. Talk to me about that and how that dance played out, because it is so interesting.
So I think when I started working with you, that's actually when Luminary was born.
Yes.
I think as a result of the work that you and I did. And the work within and the work within Luminary started to grow. It was great, Licia. We got leadership development programs for multinationals. We were delivering in the Netherlands, in Berlin, in Gurgaon, in India, in the Middle East. It was great. But I remember that in 2018, I was away from home for 180 days. And in 2016, I had worked with an amazing human being on an organization that had transformed their organizational their operating model. And to support the operating model, we had come into support in the development of the leadership brand. And that project went exceptionally well. So when he moved to Deloitte, they were looking for a person to head up the human capital practice here in the Western Cape. And he suggested my name. And I met the leaders at that time. And a year later, I started at Deloitte. And I think in the second year, I looked at my journal, and I think in January 2021, I had the itch, because I exited in November, but when I went back to my journal, I realized that I had journaled something in January already, on the 8th of January 2021, to be exact, because somebody asked me, so did you have a plan in place? And, I do a lot of following my heart. So, and my heart is usually in my...
As any true creator would, will follow the heart, because she always knows the way. So you're taking us to the story of, did you have a plan? But what I understand, and I'm going to put to you what I understand of so much of what started to build around the exit away from the corporate, away from Deloitte, back to Luminary, was the need to do more of the work that you chose to create, that you wanted to follow, that you wanted to do, that you were called to do. And I think there's, we hear of this thing called calling, but that calling, it's an inner bubble that starts to grow and develop. And that led you, did it not? It was that need. You knew that there was this calling of something out there in the wild, in this open space, that I want to step in and I want to do. That Certainly. Here in the corporate world, I'm enjoying and doing, but I'm doing it within confines, and there's something more that I can do. This has been such a rupture into that next level of more for you.
Certainly. Um, in fact, when I had the conversation, um, my leader then asked me, what is it? And I said, it's a fulfillment thing. And I think fulfillment is an inside thing. And, her next question was, where are you going? And I said, nowhere.
Nowhere.
And we had, I think, multiple conversations around, the alternatives of, how we could make it work. And I said, I have to be out. I have to be out. That's what I need. I need to. So my words were, I need to prune my life so that I'm only left with stuff that brings me joy. And when I audit my days have less stuff of what brings me joy than what doesn't bring me joy. And so I'm feeling unfulfilled. So, and I would like to step aside. And that's how so it was an inside thing. It was, I was feeling exhausted, not because I was working a lot. I was working a lot, of course, but a lot on the things that I don't believe fueled me.
Yes. And that level of exhaustion is the ultimate, because it's busy work and it completely drains you, completely drains you. So that's really that's the charge, right? That's the job. That's the singular job we all have, is to figure that out. What is it that completely fuels us? What is it that sparks that light? And then chase it down until we get there. Hunt it down without stopping to find it. And that in itself takes courage, takes stopping and starting, takes beginning when you don't really know where you're going, stepping out into the void. That is that's the revolution. On these conversations, it's been described as a ball of fire. It's been described as blood on the dance floor. It's been described as many different things, and it is a chase of fulfillment.
Yes. You talk about the courage and the bravery. Excuse me. Thank you. You talk about the courage and the bravery. I developed a friendship with the woman in one of our other practices in Europe. And when I booked a Teams call, like we all did during COVID, to let her know that this is what was happening, she sat on the call and she bawled and she cried. And she said, Fortune, I'm not crying for you. I'm crying because I so want to do what you've done. And I'm so scared.
That's the masterclass.
The number of people who said to me,
if I would, if I could.
You are so brave. You're so brave. I think that was the common theme that I got from the decision that I made. And, I think it speaks to, I always say, bravery or courage is not synonymous to a big event in your life. Bravery and courage is waking up every day and unapologetically choosing you.
Yeah.
And that can be very scary.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it scary is the voice of judgment. But people always say, oh, yes, the one. I'm like, no, honey, I'm talking about the one that's in your head. Because that's the first voice of judgment.
Yes. It's not an external voice. Yes. It's the
birthplace.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's just talk a little bit about that element of the showing up every day and being unapologetic to be one's self.
Yeah.
I celebrate the fact that there has never been a more exciting time to have to step into that space, 2022, with the access to information, the access to resources, the access to ways in which we can start to figure out craft, design, and augment what it is that we need to support us in whatever career revolution we might be going through. And I say that from a place of deep reverence to the entire career coaching industry, the entire career strategy industry, the entire you name it. There's so much information, there's so much support that one can follow. And yet people sometimes choose not to, and they sometimes choose to remain within that stuck place and withdraw because it's easier to be there, as we know, than standing out and being courageous and brave and doing what needs to happen in order to take the little steps along the journey and along the way. But what is that? What do you think that is? What is that in the psyche that we all go through? It's when I say people, we've all been through stages of that, and I think that's the ebb and flow of having a successful career that you manage and drive oneself. Is there times when it's ready to do, and there are times when you simply just have to. The heat's not. It's not hot enough. It's not one's not ready enough to kind of jump and leap and do what has to happen. And I think we've all come across those good folk across our paths, whether they've been colleagues, whether they've been people that we've referred. Now's the time you need to do this, speak to this person, do this. And there just seems to be a resistance to that. What is that, Fortune?
I think every day, every living day of ours, we are always presented with a choice to choose courage over comfort. Brené Brown said this. And you can't have consistently both. You can't have both. You can't have your cake and eat it, unfortunately. And so you either choose consistently courage or you consistently choose comfort. And Licia, the work of yourself, the work of understanding, of unpacking yourself and walking the journey of getting to know you, it can be daunting. Last week, I facilitated a session. One of the things that we were doing is I said, as leaders, you have to be able to know and own your story, because not only does it give you the tools and power to inspire, but it elevates the awareness of some of the moments of truth that have shaped the way that you show up, the lens with which you look at life, the choice that you make over courage, or whether you choose courage over comfort. The trepidation that sat in the room, that was palpable. Because I've asked people to just spend some time understanding their stories. And I gave them examples of some of those moments in my life that have molded the person that I am. And some of them point blank were like, Fortune, I don't want to go there. And so when you ask me that with the tools, platform support that's out there, why are people not stepping up? Licia, it's a tall order. It is work. It is absolute work getting to know yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the work that I do. I'm in the position of favor who gets to meet those action takers who are ready to do the work. So they step forward with friction and frustration, and this is what I want to be doing, and I want to do it there, but help me get there, and we then head to do the work. So the question I ask you is because I see so many others who can do that too. It's not a lottery finding the place of where you want to be. It's not just reserved for a few, that we're not, this is, we all have it within us to do. It can all be done. Yes, it takes work. Yes, it's a tall order. But perhaps what you're hearing from me is my inner world of, you can do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
Because I get to be in the room with action takers, and we get to do the work. And I'm always looking at the people who aren't doing it, wondering when are they going to do it, and why don't they do it? So I suppose it's an unfair question to ask, but at the same time, it's that's the frustration. You know that Elizabeth Gilbert talks about Elizabeth Gilbert, the writer, talks about in the creative process or in any process, when you find the thing that you love to do and you continue to do it and chase it down and hunt it down, along that way you will come across, and she refers to it, and excuse my language, but there's no other way to describe it, she refers to it as shit sandwiches. Eating a shit sandwich. So no matter the violinist who loves to play music, the sandwich that he or she might have to eat is tuning the machine, or whatever it might be, or playing until your fingers bleed, and then not having the ability to sort of grow the skin to replace it. So we all have along, even within the work that we love that sparks joy, there's always going to be something. And I think that what I'm revealing to you is that's my something. The sandwich that I have to eat is, why won't the others do the work too? Why won't they take the action? Because it's so frustrating, I suppose, to watch people stay in a position of stuckness and pain.
Licia, we must not underestimate the arrest that is created by narratives that people have picked up along the way.
And how solidifying they are.
And how real they are. And how, they just weigh heavily on people, and how the brain can perfectly rationalize not doing the work. So
absolutely.
Yes.
And
so I guess my invitation is to err on the side of compassion.
Lesson learned.
Because the scripts can be real, and the scripts can be scary.
Yes. No, without a doubt, absolutely. Fortune, thank you for that. Tell us about Luminary. So the dance of in the corporate, out the corporate, as we said, came from this inner need, this desire to create the fulfillment, but to create the work that you wanted to do, because you could see it, but you weren't able to do it. So you continued to go. So I love that Luminary has that incredibly, it's the sight. It's a line of sight of seeing something, and it's lighting the sight for others. There's there's so many different interpretations of that amazing, magnificent name that you have chosen to frame your organization and your business. What's coming for you? What's next? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so yes, luminary light, definitely. We believe in light. So we call ourselves an organizational development consultancy. We do work in the leadership space. Our tagline is inspire, motivate, teach, because we believe that the work that we do should always inspire people, one, to exhibit life in its fullest in whatever role that they are in. We believe strongly in the premise of leadership as practice rather than leadership as a role or a competence, but that actually all of us need to practice leadership. Um, so, some of the work in the leadership space that we do is personal mastery, individual coaching. We also do work around culture transformation, and that includes the work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so you will see we've been quite deliberate around women. So in March, we hosted an International Women's Day breakfast. And we were intentional around crafting conversations that really speak to breaking the bias. And last week, we hosted the National Women's Month breakfast, and the theme was building meaningful allyships for sustainable transformation. So we aim to stay present in conversations that are going to cultivate gender transformation. So we'll always add our voice to the International Women's Day and the National Women's Day here in South Africa. We also do strategy facilitation. We believe that strategy, my strategy lecturer when I was doing my EMBA, Johan Strumpfer, always used to say that strategy is a series of conversations that inspire action. So we aim to simplify the conversations around strategy so that what is seen as complex through our process facilitation can be simplified and made accessible to the people who are meant to enable and deliver and execute on the strategy. So those are the key areas that we play in.
Wonderful, marvelous, and what phenomenal events you curate as you bring your connections and your specific themes, as you said, breaking the bias, which was the broad international breakfast that you held this year. So, and all of that information we can find from the Luminary website. For everybody who's here, who's following, and who's watching or listening, links to Fortune's website will be available. And obviously, if you're here on LinkedIn, to completely follow the content that she shares and puts out, because it will certainly engage and inspire you. And Luminary is an exciting organization to keep its eyes on. So just to wrap up, Fortune, as we round off the conversation, so many interesting, fascinating things that you've shared. Thank you. I think this possibly might be one of many conversations, if I can dare to say, because it feels as if there's more to talk about, more to say. Your experience and your journey has been the sort of channeling your inner creator, and stepping up and doing the work that wasn't available when you were in the organizations. And as we know, and as we've said, fear is so often that standoff. There's a standoff point there. How did you get to overcome that? And I mean, there's so many things that will lead to that answer, but what can you share as something tangible for those who are listening who might find themselves in that?
Sure. So I always say I don't underestimate the confidence that I was given by the work that I did before I joined Deloitte. So I had been able to actually start something and see it grow before I joined Deloitte. So I don't underestimate that. But rewind a few years ago, when I was at Toyota, I left Toyota on an MSA, what is called a mutual separation agreement. But the lady I worked for at the time was so kind, because even when I left, she still left me on the payroll, and I think for 4 months after. So for me, I truly believe that this has been rigged in my favor. I believe strongly in this whole idea that life is rigged in my favor.
Mm,
So from the time that I left, when I left Toyota, I wasn't stuck, because I think we underestimate the fear that comes with not knowing where your next paycheck is going to come from.
mm,
And so we talk
mm,
about the novelty of entrepreneurship, and we don't talk about the fear, the
mm,
basic survival fear that is created by not
mm,
knowing where
mm,
your livelihood is going to come from.
mm,
So in both instances, I've had the power of the Almighty, the universe, whatever you want to call it, having my back, and
mm,
not having to have the fear of, if I leave, what's going to happen? So I
mm,
think that is very important.
mm,
Um, and, if I then look at, the philosophical side, is this thing here, this here called life is rigged in my favor. And so
mm.
I will continuously and consistently bet on myself. I can't expect the universe to bet on me if I'm not betting on myself. So, girl, boy out there, bet on yourself,
Take
and the universe
it.
will back
Yes.
you. Yeah,
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that.
yeah,
It's, this thing is rigged in my favor. And it's a sold
definitely.
out belief in everything's going to be okay, even if it doesn't feel that way right now. Things are going to work out for the better. I either learn or I grow.
Mm, mm, mm,
There's
certainly.
yeah, no
Mm,
loss.
mm,
Fortune,
yeah.
thank you. We're pushing on over time, so we do need to close
Yeah.
off. But I thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing some of your stories and your revolutions. It
Thank
really has been wonderful to be able to have this platform to
you.
for you to speak to me on. And
Thank you.
thank you for the work that you're doing, because as I always say, when you bet on yourself, you inspire the hearts and minds of others to do the same. And as you when you step over the fear and you wake up with that unconditional, no, it's going to be me first, it's going to be all right, I'm going to do that, by osmosis gets passed on. So wherever you're
Certainly.
at, whatever room you're in, you imbue that to everyone. I don't even know if that's a word, but that's what we're going to use.
I'll own it.
Oh, that's imbue it. You, it,
Yeah.
it, it passes through you. It
Yeah.
passes through you, that belief that you have within yourself. It's absolutely magnetic. So
Mm.
for that, thank you, because then it inspires the people, it inspires the action takers that can step into the room with me or step
Thank
into the
you.
room. They step into the room of knowing themselves. That's the room that they need to be
Mm.
in. So
Mm.
um, with
Thank
deep
you.
reverence to that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for
Thank you,
everything that you've
Licia.
shared and said. And to all our guests, followers, and listeners and audience, with the greatest of welcome, reverence, and from the heart that you're here with us today with Fortune. Follow in the comments.
Mm.
There'll be lots of links to engage and connect with Fortune. And
Mm.
our time here has come to an end, but you'll be back, I hope.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Licia. It's been lovely. Thank you.
With the greatest of pleasure. Thank you, Fortune.
Cheers.